Okay, greetings everybody. I am Marguerite Rigoglioso of Seven Sisters Mystery School, and welcome to our monthly YouTube Live, co-creating the new Earth with the Fae and the Xi. Who are these beings? Well, we're going to be talking a little bit about that
with the Fae and the Xi
today.
Who are these beings? Well,
I
we're
can
going to
see
be
that I've got
talking
my
with the Fae and the.
I've got my other YouTube channel on, so we had to get that off. Anyway, here we are. I am so excited today to have IndigoAngel with us. If you were part of the Healing the Womb 3 sacred medicine container a couple of weeks ago, then you will have gotten an introduction to Indie if you didn't already know about her. And if you did not join us for that, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do. We will have a link for how to continue to register for that under this video in YouTube. We are welcoming comments and questions during this broadcast. Indie and I are going to start out by talking about what she knows about the Xi and the Fae and their origins, what I know about it. We're going to move into dragons. We're going to talk about the new Earth. Indie has a lot of information about the new Earth. And if you stay tuned until the end, we're going to announce the 3 winners of our media giveaway, our social media giveaway for Seven Sisters Mystery School. 3 lucky people who have participated in Instagram and our Facebook page have been selected as the winners of 8 of our courses from the vault. These are still cutting edge, amazing courses on all different types of topics available on demand. So let me just say a little bit about Indie and then just have you say hello and launch in. Her human name is Amanda Jane DeMarco. And, Marguerite, she was excited about that last name. Is that Italian? Turns out they're both from Sicily. Okay, so we both have Sicilian heritage. That's another area where we might be able to go today. And her ascended identity is IndigoAngel. So this is the higher aspect of her soul, her higher self, her, the reason, the purpose that she came here on planet Earth after a horrendous time, a horrendous number of years as a young mother, as somebody who really went into the depths, like so many of us have done over the past 10 years and more, really got to the edge, had basically a near-death experience, and then started opening up her vessel to all of this divine information that was her original birthright anyway. So she really connects with galactic realms. And India, I'll also let you talk to us about how it is that you do this accessing. And then we'll go into the discussion about the Fae, the Xi, the origins, and more. So go ahead. Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for having me here today with you. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm really looking forward to diving into the topics of discussion today that we're going to get into. And thank you for the lovely introduction. Yes, so how I access this information, it has come through my ascension processes, my rigorous ascension processes. And it's really has come through navigating all of my interdimensional aspects of myself, learning spiritual sciences, really connecting in with, as Z would say in some of her school that she has, she talks about the lucidity training and things like that. So it's really being able to tune into your psychic abilities and access everything on a much deeper level. I would say I do a lot of just direct transmission ultimately. Some might call it channeling, but it's ultimately, I think it's direct electrical impulse. It's really just at the speed of light. It's just direct transmission. And so I'm just pulling a lot of information that way. Everything also has come through a lot of deep study. So I have studied a lot of great literature, a lot of great works. And so it's just kind of a collaboration of studies, tuning in, meditation, and just putting together my own authentic picture and perception of everything that I'm tuning into and perceiving. And I just go deep. I go super quantum, and I feel everything to the core, and try to bring forth my most authentic expression of what I think everything means ultimately. So it's exciting. It's definitely my passion and my life work. I dedicate everything to this work, because I truly do believe in the future prophecy. I truly believe in the transformation that the earth and the planet and what we're going through on a level of humanity in terms of our ascension and our collective shared experience. And so I know that we are transcending the nefarious and the dualistic aspects of our realities, but we're definitely it's going to take a lot of time as we head through this transformation over hundreds of years, as we bring forth the future Earth and transcend a lot of the genetic manipulation that has happened throughout history up until this point in time. So yeah, there's so much there with all of this, but I look forward to kind of breaking down certain components of it as we kind of work through this message today.
Yeah, blessed be. Thank you so much for being here, your beautiful, shining self. And when you said, 100 years from now, it's like, oh, that's a long time to wait. But, you're going to see Marguerite and IndigoAngel in the history books then. All right. So they have a lot of patience. All right. They see the long picture. Also, I just wanted to mention that we now on our Seven Sisters Mystery School, the Marguerite Rigoglioso YouTube channel, have the capacity to receive super chats. You might be aware of what that is. Those are donations. There's a button link there. And we see that we've already had one generous donation from my assistant, Courtney Harper. Thank you so much, dear. But yeah, that's an option that's open. And I see that we have more people coming on live, which is very, very exciting. We want to know where you're from. We're seeing your live stream here. Please be nice to us, okay? and let us know if you have questions, because we are taking all of these questions as we go along. So, Indie, I work in the same way in that, I had kind of a traumatic childhood, and I had a dramatic event with the loss of my mother. And I think those kinds of things, all of those traumas just propelled me into my life mission. I kind of knew in advance, you're going to go in, it's going to be a hard lifetime, and it's going to awaken you. And mine was a little bit slower over time. And it was a lot through synchronicities. Like I'd be having all these magical things happen to me and realizing, okay, there's something more. And then I trained myself in psychic skills. I went to a psychic training and further trained myself as an oracle, what I describe, what you're doing. And then I really started out, though, as a scholar. I was doing all sorts of research and opening up and having all of these downpours. So it sounds like we're kind of working in the same way. Oh, wonderful. I'm seeing so many lovely people here. Excellent. So, Indie, why don't we just jump in? Because first of all, let me explain a little bit about the Fae and the Xi and the Tuatha de Danaan. I've talked about this in some other area, some other venues. But so what we're learning is that the Xi are known as the Shining Ones. And that word is spelled Sidhe. That's kind of the English transliteration. And these may well be the Tuatha de Danaan, the shining beings who came to Earth that are encoded in stories, particularly in Ireland and the British Isles, that those isles were a main portal through which those beings decided to come in, begin to activate and interact on the Earth plane. And it seems that they are actually, in a way, our origin. They are our ancestors, if you will. And what I learned at Findhorn from various teachers in that Scottish location, which is a wonderful place to visit and go to workshops to do, is that the Xi kind of split into Xi and humans. Oh, frequency matters. Thank you for that super chat. And the She split into humans and She, and those originators remained in fifth dimensional consciousness, and our human branch went more into third dimensional consciousness. And then at a certain point, like the distance became so great, and other things started happening on the planet, like cosmic galactic wars against the Tuatha de Danaan and the She, that they had to go underground. And that is registered as myths that literally they went underground. Whether they went into inner Earth or whether they went into interdimensional Earth, it's not 100% clear. Like we're all just starting to understand and lift the veils off this. And then the interactions between the She, who also are, they're also known as the fairy races, but there are many races of fairy. And there are some races of fairy that are much more connected in with trees and flowers and lakes and ponds and, all that type of thing. But they're all, I see the She as kind of like the huge overlords almost of the Fae, right? And then those veils became thicker. We were no longer able to communicate as much, and we were no longer able to legitimately sexually unite with them, except through like trickery and things like that. So this is where we have the stories of the capture and the swapping out of human babies for fairy and fairy babies for human that are in the lore of Ireland, etc. So that's a little bit of what I know about them on the Earth plane. Indie, share with us anything you might know about where they hail from galactically, these She, these fairy, these Tuatha de Danaan. What have you been getting about this?
Well, it's really interesting that you tie it in with the burning ones, because
The shining ones, yeah.
the shining ones, yeah, it seems as if the Fae, the She, the dragons, and even the serpent lineages, I've tied all of these into the Seraph, which are representative of, I believe it is the burning ones, the holiest of holy, which are considered the highest, I guess, angelic choir or pantheon, the closest to God, essentially. So I do think that these soul lineages, whether they're one or whether they were divided into different archetypes or I guess soul groups or monadic structures, but I feel that they're all related as the original core progenitors of the earth, and that they all have something to do with, on a cosmic level, bringing forth cosmic teachings. The original, teachings of Gaia, basically, that have descended and came through the Essene Grail lines. So I think a lot of these beings, the shining ones, the seraphim, ultimately are the guardians of the earth. And I think with what I've found out with the Fae is that on a galactic level, that they originated from Polaris, that they are Polarian. It has a lot to do with the alignments to the North Pole, to the metagalactic core, to our north and south nodes, and that the Fae, the She, and even potentially the dragon mothers and the cosmic mothers, the serpent mothers, that they all then descended through the north and south nodes into the northern territory and regions of the planet, and also the southern portions as well. Because it's kind of as if when you start looking at global civilizational history, we have deep roots from the south that have come up through Australia, the Pacific Islands, India, and then we have this northern descendancy that's kind of come down through Ireland, the Druids, the Vikings, the Celtics, and that these seem to be the most ancient records.
Yeah. And you also hear the term Hyperboreans, which is in the ancient Greek records, literally. And there's been a lot of mystical discussion about who were they? Were they connected to the Pleiades? Where, the god Apollo would go to Hyperborea during, I think it was like the summer months, and would leave Delphi, and he would not be the oracular god there. Then it would be Dionysus. So yeah, we're talking about places, place names, on planet, off planet, in planet, inner outer that we need to reclaim. I mean, that is just completely fascinating. And the fact that these beings, it makes total sense to me that they would be really close to the divine, really close to the angelics, in a way, part of the angelics, the positive angelics, the non-fallen angelics, right? And how amazing that the earth is so close to the divine realms, because in so many of these ancient stories, even the Gnostics, you hear of like all of these different layers and dimensions, and it just, the God seems so far away, you know, and I think that's part of the programming, when in fact they're just right here, and they're so right here that they're in the trees, they're in the flowers, right? These are our closest interdimensional friends that took, you know, bothered to come into incarnation into the earth plane and the natural world, the earth. So here they are, generally being ignored, cut off, decimated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have this opportunity to awaken to them and start working and playing with them again. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. One thing I've noticed in a lot of my travels to Stargate locations, particularly I just did a trip to Machu Picchu. So when you're talking about the spirits of the land and the Fae and feeling that dragon Sophia, you know, the purity of that energy, especially in these rural areas, you know, big city areas, a lot of that energy I feel has been siphoned, hijacked, cut off. It's been radiated. It's been, you know, the grids themselves have been so inundated with artificial frequency that it's really hard to connect in. I was just telling a gal that I was working with the other day, like, if you want to connect to the spirits of the land, like, you got to get off grid. You got to go deep into parts of the land where you can really connect into areas where it's not so saturated with, you know, cell tower and electromagnetic radiation, because the spirits are actually having a really hard time transmitting through that. It's wiping it out. I talked about that in my last CERN update, was how, you know, they're damaging the electromagnetic natural grid currents, the telluric currents, and also the light gridding templates that uphold the prophecy to the new earth.
Wow.
And so the spirits are trying to so, you know, naturally and organically communicate through our organic systems, but we have these oversized beast machines and, you know, infiltration on this earth for all of the nefarious agendas that have definitely been making that connection very difficult. And so we get more separated to our connection with Gaia. But, you know, not on a heart-based level. Like, you know, we are connected to that through the Harit chakra, the higher chakra. And that is the dragon chakra. If you've read any of the Sophia Code, it's a very popular book. I have it here because I was like pulling all of my references for dragon stuff as I was preparing to come talk to you today, because I was so excited to dive into this. It's a great reference for, I don't know if she goes into the Fae too much, but she definitely talks a lot about the dragon light body, and that the dragon energy and essence and core spiritual body of that is actually a protective force field around us, and golden scales that many of us who are of the Sophianic bloodlines, the goddess Isis bloodlines, you know, of the Essene bloodlines, because as again, they're saying that the Fae, the dragon, and I always throw in the serpent lineages, because I'm like, don't forget about the serpent lineages, because they were just as much a progenitor creators. I mean, the Anunnaki were the Anunnaki, like they were serpent cults. And so because of all of this demonization that we're fighting throughout history, right? We're trying to restore the feminine code ultimately, because I think this is what the 13 dragon mother bloodlines are emanating in and through, is this Sophianic grail line that, you know, extends through all these different versions of that, the Tuatha de Danaan, if I'm saying that correctly. It's all coming through those bloodlines. And so I think we're going through a great resurrection of that right now. So much. I mean, with the death of the queen, all of that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so time for also the Irish people to really awaken to the fact that they have the probably highest percentage of Tuatha de Danaan blood in them, DNA. They are right there. And whenever I have sessions with people, sometimes I'm just struck at the fairy look of their face, and I'll say something and they'll burst into tears, and like, yes. And so I've been getting this message, that the Irish need to call back their dragons. And then my mentor, Patricia Anderson, read that, well, it may be not that we're not quite ready for that. Like, a few other steps need to happen in Ireland before we can actually do that big ritual, or, series of rituals or whatever. Wanted to give a shout out to Shauna Holmes. Somebody had mentioned that she is channeling about these beings. I know Shauna from back in Mount Shasta days, and that's fantastic. Shauna is a really amazing channel. And we just have some people from all over the world really coming on here. So it's very, very exciting. I was astounded when I heard in Lisa Renee's transmission from, I think, a couple of months ago in her Shifting Timelines, that Mother Mary is the head of the dragons.
Yeah.
So in other words, Mother Mary represents that Sophianic identity that we can recognize on planet Earth through her personality structure as Mother Mary. And that she is really coming back on the planet. And that just astounded me because, I came out with the book on Mother Mary as a divine birth priestess in 2001. I'm writing another one, and I'm like, I guess this is all in divine timing. And what an amazing thing to think of Mother Mary as head of these dragons, these benevolent mother dragons who are all throughout the earth grids, who are like repopulating now, gathering their severed body parts together, and connecting with the astral, with the universal, cosmic, Sophianic dragons, and then what the relationship is to the Nagas and the serpent beings on the earth, being very different from the unfriendly reptile races that are being discussed, different from, yet having spliced DNA into, right, through other nefarious things that went on, what I get from the activities of the fallen angelics. So that has just created a real schism in the world that we're dealing with. And we are trying to remedy this, and rectify things on planet Earth with the restoration of the grids. Other comments, other thoughts about any of that?
Yes. Yeah, like you said, calling back our parts, our fragmented parts. Yes, absolutely. I think that there is a cosmic Christos dragon teachings, and I think that this is the basis for all of the mother dragon knowledge, and it is exemplified through the Mary Magdalene Sophia legacy. Which ultimately has been gradually desecrated and destroyed and converted into Vatican approved narratives. I even think the Vatican, Vaticanus, like maybe in Latin or something like that, is actually dragon. So it's almost as if they have, siphoned this architecture, this spiritual energy, and have kind of made a mockery out of it. Because, we got into discussing how the head of Medusa is underneath the Vatican, and that, in some of my remote views and channelings, I've seen Mother Mary tied in red ropes and actually bonded or in bondage to the Vatican, through the patriarchy mentalities and through, the programming and the PDSs, the patriarchy demon seeds. And so I think we're going through a great reclamation of all of this. Absolutely. And a lot of it is being restored through these particular bloodlines. And all of this really, I think, goes back to the motherlands of Mu. Well, it goes back to the Polarian races coming down through the elementals of fire but coming down through, like you said, Hyperborea, the elementals of air, and then coming into the golden age of Mu, which is where I think the dragons and the Fae have ultimately, on a galactic level, they were the spiritual link that actually brought in Earth to Sirius, to Neptune, to Palladian, to Orion, and they protected the flames of wisdom that held the star portals open.
Wow.
So this is really, really about our creation story here and everything that we are. Like, it's so vast, and really ties into on a grid level when you're talking about restoring these grids, going back to that point, because I'm like going around in circles with the multidimensionality here.
Of course. It's spiral. It's spiral.
Yeah, definitely.
Goodness.
Back to the point. I'm like, now I remember where I was going with this. So the Pleiadians had a lot to do with this during the time of Mu, because they installed a 24-point crystal organic nodal spiritual immune system, basically in the high peak points of the mountains. There's many of these different systems that form these organic grid networks, but that one is very, very important, because they're almost like the stations of the Seraphim light cities themselves, and they're like the guardian stations on the earth. So I think if you even tuned in or were able to get to some of these high peak points, I think Mount Shasta even being one of them, you're going to be able to connect into that guardian Lemurian Mu energy that allows you to have access to those wisdom portals of the stars. And I think it's been specifically intended to help our planet during the period of 2012 to 2032 as we go through this major ascension cycle. And I think it's, preparing us for the new golden age of our era, because there is a golden age that has reigned in every single root race or era or, civilizational time. We do get to that fundamental point. So I think a lot of this technology is coming back, even in the container. I was going to ask you, did you get the video series up on your website for people to come and purchase the course that we taught for that container?
Healing the Womb. Yes. And people have been still enjoying that. They've been signing up. Healing the Womb 3, the Sacred Medicine container. I have it on the Seven Sisters Mystery School.com website. Indie, if you have it up on yours, IndigoAngel 222.
Mine is still kind of in construction. I think it's going to be up today or tomorrow.
Okay, bless you.
Yeah, I can't wait, because we really kind of covered a lot of that. And in the third day, I did the healing with that, where we accessed those light temples. And that's just technology, that more of this technology is being awakened through the Dragon Mothers, through reclaiming our Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary fragmented parts of our soul for over 2,000, 6,000, 100,000 years on this earth here. We're just continuing to gain so much more technology to access and utilize and connect it into the gridding templates.
Yes. Wow. Yes. And Courtney has provided the link for where it is on Seven Sisters, or you can go to IndigoAngel222.com also to find out more about Indigo and her services as well. It's also, I think, still under Xi Earthstar's wombhealth.org. So either any one of those, roll the dice and see where you should register for. And you'll be led to what you need to, whatever medicine. Maybe there's medicine through Seven Sisters or through Earthstar Academy with Xi or through Indie. There were a few things that you said that are just so stimulating that I want to go back to. And this a little bit goes to our ancestral lines. You talked about the head of Medusa being under the Vatican. I have seen an image of the upside down head of Medusa that's like at the base of a column that's in the ground. It's kind of greenish. I don't know if that's the one you're talking about or if that's somewhere else, but perhaps the literal skull of Medusa is there. Like maybe they kept that skull, like they supposedly kept Mary Magdalene's skull, and it's in France, and they take it out every once in a while. What if they took that skull of Medusa that Perseus cut off And it was really interesting because we're talking about Shauna Holmes. She's the one who channeled for me that I am the reincarnation of Danae, the mother of Perseus, okay, who was raped by Zeus through a shower of gold because I thought I was doing a divine birth ritual. And then here he was seeding his Anunnaki seed into me, AKA Perseus, who then went and cut off the head of Medusa. And so that fascinates me to think about that it might be literally, being used. Oh my God. Like, we really have to restore Medusa's head to her body and understand that her snake head, the hair is connecting her to the Nagas, to the serpent wisdom, the serpent beings. What I want to go to is that Sicily, the triangular island that we have ancestry from, like almost in the same, like 30 miles away. The symbol of Sicily is called the Trinacria. And it is 3 rotating legs around the head of Medusa. Talk about an eerie symbol, right? And that is the center of the island, is the head, which is where they have a sacred peak, a kind of a double peak that was known to Demeter and Persephone. That was their holy site back, several thousand years ago. And so when you start making I've written, a master's thesis on Demeter and Persephone and Sicily and that connection with Medusa. When you start making all of these connections, not on just the academic level, not even on the like Goddess 101 level, but on the level that you're talking about, how are these grids? Where are they? What do we need to do today? How deeply esoteric this is. It becomes really, really fascinating. So I think it's interesting that you and I were brought together as these like 2 Sicilian kind of sisters carrying something of that blood, because I've spent a lot of time researching Sicily and Italy and the traditions there and how all of that got taken over by Rome, which really was an incursion of these negative beings, into the planet through these institutions like the ones you're talking about. And I just think there's so much medicine there, as well as in Ireland and really everywhere, right? Every single place you go has its indigenous wisdom stream, and every lineage that you're a part of has its indigenous wisdom stream. And what you want to do is go back and find where it's stronger, where it's purer. How many generations do you have to go back to gather that information and then just bring it through your bloodline? And the last thing I'll say is, you're talking about mountain peaks and things being, of course, the portals where these beings come through, these intelligences, these lines come through. Moses knew that. That's why he went up to the top of the mountain, all these other beings. And what do we see in California, where I lived for 20 years? So-called Mount Diablo, Devil's Mountain, which was not devil at all. What did they put on top of it? Right on the very point, a concrete building. Literally, the little teeny tiny point that's like a little clitoris coming through can be accessed. You go up there into that room and you can touch the point, but they've dampened it down and destroyed the grids by putting the concrete on it. Then Mount, the one down in San Jose, and it means Hummingbird Mountain. I don't know why I'm thinking Uluru, but that's in Australia. It might come to me. Anyway, it's the one in San Jose. What happened? The military put a cube on there, a concrete cube, for no reason at all. It has no function. And it's like, the people in California, are they so asleep? Like, did nobody question why is that cube there? Why is that cube on Mount Diablo? It disrupts the advent of these energies that you're talking about, that are our nourishment to the Bay Area, which is the remnant, the people who fled from ancient Lemuria are all there, you know, through the ancient tribes, and then the peoples who have migrated there. And so these things are still being stymied and stopped. And we have to recognize when there is a cap on a sacred mountain, we know that it's being interfered with. And these are the types of things that we have to either work around or work through, so that we can start bringing that information back through the grids. The other thing that goes on in these places is not only do they put cell towers, but what else do they put? Simple, plain old electricity, electrical lines. I went up to Mount Diablo a number of years ago, and they said, do not enter. You know, it was this thing. It was like the most intense part of it. And I was like, I'm entering. So I sat there and I'm meditating and I'm like, holy crap. It was like, you can hear the electrical generator of this electricity that's going all down through the transformers and this and that. And I'm like, wow, this is definitely toxic. But I'm here for a few minutes to realize that, oh gosh, they have screwed up the whole Earth grids through electrical wiring. That electricity is like the worst thing that ever happened to the planet. And we don't even know or see that. I mean, gosh, convince us to get rid of electricity, right? That's going to be totally, you know, a really hard thing to do. But the thing is that we can transcend any of these things. So I'll just pause and see what you have to offer.
Well, I wanted to actually ask you a question to see if you could go back and touch on more of the history of Sicily, and because I'm really curious, and I know this is a conversation we've been actually meaning to have, I think, for a little while. You mentioned something about Palermo, and that there was something that happened with people who came from there versus Sicily, that there was. Were you saying that those who came to America from Palermo would say that they were from Sicily because there was something that happened in Palermo?
Right, almost. And by the way, Courtney, thank you. It's Mount Umunum is the one that in San Jose that they capped with that bizarre cube. So that is Hummingbird Mountain, very, very sacred. And there are mercury lines that were there that was mined by Chinese workers that, of course, was totally toxic. And then there's red jasper in those mountains. It's very sacred. Right. About Sicily. What I was referring to was that if you have relatives from Corleone, it benefits you to say you're from Palermo instead, for reasons that will become obvious to anybody who's watched The Godfather or any of those films. Because of any actual or mistaken identification with the bloodlines of the mafia that came into Sicily, however well-meaning they might have been originally, and then were just immediately corrupted and turned into crime syndicates and so forth. So Corleone is a major node for that. And a lot of migrants came from Sicily to the United States because that area was impoverished by the feudal system. It's such a wealthy area of fertile earth, you know, productivity and so forth. But the people all got under that feudal system, controlled, overlorded, lost their land, et cetera, et cetera. It created incredible, intense poverty over hundreds and hundreds of years, leading, and in southern Italy, leading to the desperate migration of these people into Ellis Island. Okay, so that's what it is. It's just the idea that you have to be a little careful with, if you're from Corleone, as Marguerite is, what you say about it. So, but I did think it was because, you know, for all we know, maybe your relatives are from Corleone and they're saying Palermo.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to figure out, because it's a great mystery. To be honest with you, I do know that my father's side and his grandparents came through Ellis Islands, and so, but I don't have a lot more information, but I'm just so excited to maybe start opening up that door and kind of diving in more, because it would be really interesting to know.
That's right. No doubt you have relatives. in that part of Sicily, Western Sicily, that you could find. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, but as far as the tampering and the grids, like the electrical system, there's just so much that they're doing. I mean, this is just extensive beyond. I have a fly. This is extensive beyond belief. Um, there's in some of my deep dives I've done, I've taken note of something that they do in places like Area 51, Area 52, places like submarine facilities. They do something called planetary branding. They even do this in the airports. I think they do this at Denver International Airport. They take, iron rods basically, and they form their geometric symbolism and they brand it into the ground.
Wow.
To run that frequency of the transmission of whatever the agenda is through the iron rods into the ground, sending the radiation or just the frequency templates basically to distort the land, or to even call in or to even send signals to spaceships. That's why I say submarine facilities, because they can do a lot of this transmission underwater. And I think that's a way that a lot of the Saturnian and even royal Nibirian Anunnaki lineages, royal Orion facets, negative agenda type lineages and races are accessing the underground, because we talk about how the reptilians and these races are coming up subterranean.
Yeah.
And so I think it's through these underwater ports, underwater stargates, and that they're using all of this through militarization, so secret space programs, things like this. I really think people should be questioning more about these types of particular programs and what their agendas are. And honestly, also the military, because you talk about the Central Intelligence Agencies, and we talk about, how that's the capital of CERN. CERN is our Central Intelligence Agency, and the nuclear research that's going on there, and overall looking at, what is the drive and force of humanity with investing billions and gazillions of human blood, is what I like to call it, money, right? Because we're farming humans for, the production of all of these things and for the development of AI and transhumanism. It's all conglomerating into this harvesting of human energy, whether that's through our energy, through our sweat and tears, through our blood, whatever it is, through our consciousness. This is what is driving all of this network and distortion to run, and there's just so much. I really think it's just the overall battle of evil.
Yeah.
Like really transcending this enmity that is in between us and our sovereignty. And why was this inserted? Where is this implant? I mean, we know it comes through the crucifixion. We know it comes through the persecution. It comes through the Holocaust. But how do we really get to the core root of relinquishing the strongholds of this, so that way we're not at war within ourselves?
Right. Exactly. I know, because it's like we've got the good angel and the bad angel on each shoulder, and we're dealing with this because of the DNA and the hybriding that we've experienced. So let's look at that in a minute, because also somebody's asking, is it possible to touch upon the strong parasites and biological monitors that are placed inside light workers? Because that's exactly what you were talking about in the Healing the Womb 3. So we'll say, dear soul who asked that question, go to one of our sites and sign up, because Indie gives the whole shebang on that, especially as it regards the womb. And she leads us through processes to unhook those tags, what she calls those tags, especially from the womb, because that's like ground zero, for a lot of these things. But it's also in male genitalia and, throughout the rest of the body. So I'm going to have you address that in a moment. What I want to go back to is the thing about the capping of the mountains, capstones, and all these weird things that they've done. I've mentioned this in a couple of different places. Ireland on Hilatara, that's like their main central connector to the galactic realms, to the sovereignty goddesses. I learned from my friend Zoe Daly there. The sovereignty goddesses are really connected into that mountain. It's the Hilatara. they put a phallic sword there, a phallic stone, calling it the Stone of Destiny. And
Sure
they
they
put
did.
it, yeah, and they put it, right, I was there, they put it in this circular thing that has rays radiating out of it like a sun. And it's like, oh my gosh, that is an exact example of redirecting for the negative phallic agenda. And that is not to denigrate males, but there is these interdimensional negative beings that tend to be more in the masculine polarity. That's their agenda, right? So now they own the Hill of Tara. So the creation of a road around it is the least of the Irish people's problems. Your main problem is that phallic stone up there. It's like and I'm not advocating violence or destruction or anything. I am advocating finding the inner resources for redirecting Hill of Tara in a peaceful, beautiful way and within yourself, right? Because we're not about going into battle. We're not about breaking things up. We're not about, taking a sledgehammer, blah, blah, blah. It's like we don't need sledgehammers. We need just to understand how to redirect in peace and love and get into the love vibration, which will get well above these lower vibrations. They either can't see it or they don't like it, right? And so that's how we're doing this. We're doing this through love. So yes, to go back to this idea of tags and implants, maybe you could address that a little bit, because this is very much connected with how we're going to go into the new earth. First, we need to take our shower and our bath, and then we can go out with our robes on and figure it out. So yeah, Indie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the dismantling of universal implants, seals, tags, abduction, all of that is a part of the prophecy of the new earth, of the new future Lemuria is what I like to call it. There will be a great subtle dismantling of those distortions, and the timelines in which they exist are going to ultimately collapse. I like to think that a lot of these seals and implants, particularly the J seals, are, and even the Draco seals is what I call them, all of the implants and seals on a universal level. And I say on a universal level because I like the analogy that if I see someone just walking down the street, let's say I had some sort of radar, I could just scan them. Their energy fields almost look like trash cans. Okay. If you can tune into their eternal Akashic history, because, let's say they lived during the Lemurian time and the Atlantean time and the Aryan time. So they have all of these, froze there for a second, universal, global, collective, shared implants that are basically blocking their unconscious, their subconscious, and their conscious mind on all of the levels of their auric identity, astral identity, causal identity, capping their consciousness in certain points and their field, causing illness and distortions inside the body. This is all playing out within their eternal records. But then we also have things that are current and running, just from everyday traumas and from everyday existence here. So it's like there's so much that we're carrying, and that's why it's good to constantly be clearing and having those removed and working to have that sovereignty within your body, so that way they're not blocking or capping you and limiting you in some way. But essentially they all resort back to certain core world wounds, certain events in the Earth's global history and timeline that, something massive occurred, massive genocide, massive ethnic cleansing, massive migrations, massive, dying out, or, whatever it is. But even meteorite impacts, things like this, like we're all energetically carrying all of that. And so we have certain sets of shared distortions that are running from different timeline fields. And so it's all about restoration from original core world wounding and being able to identify that so that way we can rectify and unify those timelines and heal the intergenerational trauma and the hybridization that has come from those things. Because according to Lemurian time, it wasn't, we weren't supposed to intergenerationally mate. We weren't supposed to, or mate with outside of our bloodline. Basically, we're supposed to keep the bloodlines pure because it would bring more unification genetically, alchemically, and also spiritually, with anchoring in more pure crystalline souls, fifth dimensional souls. So a lot of that has come through the forced breeding programs, which I extensively spoke about. But essentially,
three. Yeah, in
yeah.
the Healing Room 3. I mean, it's critical information for people to have. Yeah, and it will make sense of everything suddenly, Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, it's such a huge component to it. It kind of brings a lot of understanding. I even kind of was getting into sort of current topics with even abortion. Somebody had said any sort of forced pregnancy is a form of slavery. And a form of forced breeding. And I just thought that was so interesting,
Yes.
given kind of where we're at in our country with the division of now having this, red states and blue states and, different policies and, whatever it is according to, the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And I'm not going to make any personal statement about I feel about that either way. But I mean, but I can see how, that's a level of it that just ties into it. But yeah, so it's really, I think, important to understand what the seals and implants are, so that way you can understand these distortions and how they might be affecting, your life and your ability to manifest here and your ability to call forth your highest noble desires in this life. This is what they want to take from you. They want to limit you and disallow your empowerment to be able to have more and feel like you are entitled to abundance and magic and, all the beautiful things and the knowledge that you can create the new earth here and that we're co-creating it. All of this is so withheld. All of this knowledge is oppressed and suppressed. We should be giving this to our children right away from 5 years old when they're asking the questions, who am I and what am I? You know what I mean? Because kids are curious and they know right away intuitively. They want answers.
Yes. Wow. So much richness in what you've said. And what I want to add into it is that although we're pulling the blanket off all of these distortions and these horrors and desecrations that have happened, that affect us every day of our lives, that affected us in childhood, that are the reason why we had all of this trauma, because trauma is not a natural thing. It's not just well, that's the way it is on planet Earth. That's the way it is on planet Earth that has been abducted, And so what we're doing is realizing, whoa, something's wrong with this picture. Remember Eden? It didn't always used to be like that. Eden is not just some fanciful, wishful thinking type situation. It's a memory. So we're trying to get back to Eden, which is the new Earth. And we are working with the Tuatha de Danaan, the Xi, and these high-level angelics, and Mother Mary, who is a direct ascension back into Mother Divine Sophia Dragon, to help us. So, people are asking, well, how do I do that? How do we do the Hilatara, blah? Go into meditation, ask for these true master beings and Mother Mary of the dragons to come in and have her give you high-level information, okay? Anything that's going to be about love and wisdom and light and truth and stamina is going to be the message. Anything that's going to be about violence and killing and blah, 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 probably not going to be it. So we all have the information. Indie and I and others who are on this watching are all stimulators, and we're all stimulators for one another. And we can all access this information by going into our deepest meditations and calling on these helper beings. So we are not at the mercy of any of this. I just want to make mention again that If you are enjoying this video, we do have a super chat function. We do accept donations, which go to the operating expenses of Seven Sisters Mystery School. And at the end, shortly, in about 8 minutes or so, we're going to be announcing the winners of our social media giveaway, the 3 lucky people who are going to receive the 8 courses each, the 8 online courses each that we were giving away, that are from our vaults, that are very, very powerful classes about, you know, the gods and I mean, many, many different topics. So, Indie, let's have you just tune in. What are you burning to say right now in this environment about anything that's been said or any other direction you'd like to take us? What's needing to come through?
I was kind of curious, honestly, because we had got into some of the reptilian history. So I know we're probably getting close to wrapping it up, but this was something that I just wanted to tell you, Marguerite, as I kind of started researching hive mentality, or ways in which, you know, the reptilian virgin queens would have operated, because you really got me curious with the vaginal vendentata. What do you call it?
The vagina dentata, the toothed vagina that could, you know, castrate.
Yeah, so it got me realizing that there are these off worlds, you know, in the Draco system, the Thuban system, which, by the way, is a huge astrological distortion, because if you look at, you know, any astrology book and look at the alignments of the Draco system, they're always going to tell you it's at 27 or 28 degrees Gemini, which is ultimately the Betelgeuse system. So yes, there is the Dracos that, you know, invaded the Orion territory and they live in these systems, but ultimately that's not the Draco alignment. It's ultimately in the ending markers of Sagittarius, first degree markers of Capricorn. So we always withhold this information in astrology, cosmology, just because it's not talked about, that there's this huge deception of trying to deter us away from truly understanding Draco inheritance, Draco knowledge, Draco history.
Yeah.
So that in itself is just a mind-boggling thing that I want to dive into at some point. But also getting into the realization that we don't have a lot of information about the reptilian nature and their origin and their home and where they came from and what they're about, because this psychology would, I think, bring huge healing to all of us in understanding these narcissistic mentalities, these Maldekian mentalities, this mindset or this mentality of this predatorial drive.
This predatorial drive,
yeah.
That can be in men and women, and that has a stronger valence toward the masculine on this planet, because those are the beings that primarily came here, and that was their valence, was primarily masculine. So what I have gotten about their origins is that simply they are spliced out dragons, and that this was done by the fallen angelics because they could start. They fell from source. They started getting a little out of alignment with source, which is what they were from. And as they started getting out of alignment, they started going into what we could identify as ego on the earth, right? They started going into ego. They started going into mind exclusively, without the womb. And they started realizing they could be creator beings and create all these different sorts of problems and things all over the universe, just like our scientists will be like, hey, let's splice together a pig and a worm just because we can. Like, it was just that kind of thing, right? Let's split the atom just because we can, without thinking of the ethics and the long-term ramifications. This type of garbage started with the angelics. That's what I received. They took dragon DNA, of which they were part. and they started distorting it. You know, they started putting other energies into it. This is what I get is how the reptilians were created. So there's karma between dragons and reptilians. And the way they were created led to this emotional body problem that they had, which was all about suffering. So their lives and their existence is all about suffering. They are so miserable. Like when I tuned into this, when I tuned into who are these reptilian queens and all this type of thing, I was like, oh my God, these queens are so miserable because they have a lot of power, a control power, but ultimately they don't, because the males can still two-time them, and they do have something of an emotional body. So they are vulnerable at the emotional level. And even though they can castrate, they, you know, it's really, really a miserable, miserable type of existence. And many women on the planet understand this type of misery because we've been in relationships like this, and men are in relationships. No one really has the power. It's about power games, but it's not really about power. So anytime you've been in this kind of misery, you know what the reptilians live like. And this is what we're trying to get out of. It's a sexual game. It's a sexual war. And this is the war on planet Earth. It's primarily a sexual war. And this is now continuing on every level with the splicing and dicing of the human body, and what is a womb, what isn't a womb, and who gets to say whether you're dead, and the whole abortion thing, which is like, on the one hand, it's a forced breeding program. On the other hand, it's an unconscious, what we would call genocide program. Both, and you see like these powers, they take this thing, which is unwanted pregnancy, and then they create all these problems. But they created unwanted pregnancy because in the Lemurian way, there's no unwanted pregnancy. You know how to get pregnant or not at will. And then it goes back to the original human form, which never even needed impregnation. It was just, whoop, I'm having a baby, you know. So we can see the rollout of these timelines. But the war is a sexual misery war. And that's what we are dealing with. And we all know it intimately. So if we're wanting to know what the reptilians are like, just look at anything miserable that's happened in your life. You are tuning into them.
Yes, I agree. Yes, that sums it up nicely. I was also reading, and it's also sexual misery against the same sex as well. A lot of the reptilian virgin queens, they would find and kill other virgin queens as well.
Competition, male competition, female competition, male competition. It's all a reptilian game. And that's what we're healing. Yeah, we all know that one too. We all know jealousy. We all know the wicked queen. The wicked queen of Cinderella is a reptilian image. And poor dear thing, she was so worried about not being beautiful. And that's been inserted into every single woman on the planet. Dear God. I mean, we are controlled by this program.
Yeah. And Queen Elizabeth, who was basically the head apex reptilian breeder, I feel that she held lower two-dimensional demonic hierarchies that answered to a reptilian queen demon force. And then
that's right.
Created.
It wasn't even her poor dear human self at 22 or 3. My gosh, God knows what ritual she was taken in on. And, you know, Elizabeth April channeled recently that yeah, she was taken over by a force. So it's like, it's not even the human person that was at control there. It was, Elizabeth April said, when these beings get you, they don't want your soul necessarily, at least not right now. You're not just selling your soul. You're not essentially selling your soul. You're selling your body. You're selling your three-dimensional body so that you can be possessed and used. And that happens to us every single time we go into a rage.